The red alarm light kept flashing inside my pump shed long after Victoria drove away. It blinked slow at first. Then faster. The sound coming through the underground pipes changed too. The smooth water rush was gone. Now it sounded hollow. Like the whole system was breathing through a cracked lung. I grabbed my boots and crossed the yard with a flashlight. Dry grass scraped against my jeans. The heat still hung in the air even after sunset. Texas summers do not cool down gently. They sit on your shoulders all night like wet concrete. Inside the shed, the pressure monitor had dropped another 6 psi. That should not have happened this quickly. Not unless the isolation sequence had already started spreading downhill. I rubbed dust off the old steel control panel my father installed back in 1987. The metal still carried scratches from his wrench. He built this backup reservoir after a drought nearly wiped this valley dry. Most people in Willow Creek thought the water system came from the county. It did not. The county only maintained the main supply line. The pressure stabilization system belonged to my family ranch. Nobody cared while their sprinklers worked. The first call came 20 minutes later. Mrs. Delaney from the south end of the subdivision. Her voice shook over the phone. "Ethan, my kitchen water smells strange." I walked outside and looked downhill toward the rows of glowing backyard lights. Several sprinkler systems had already stopped completely. Others hissed weakly across yellow lawns. Tiny streams barely reached the curb. I could almost map the pressure failure house by house. Then another call came. Then another. One family said their upstairs shower stopped running. Another said their pool autofill system was making a grinding noise. Victoria must have started hearing it too because her Lexus came flying back up my gravel road around 9:30. Dust rolled behind her headlights like smoke. She slammed the door harder this time. No smile now. No polished HOA voice either. "What did you do?" she snapped. I leaned against the shed doorway and listened to the pump cycling unevenly behind me. "You locked the system owner out," I said. The system responded. She stared at me like I had spoken another language. That was the problem with people like Victoria. They thought infrastructure was decorative. Like fountains at shopping centers or flowers around subdivision signs. She never understood that water systems panic when they lose pressure balance. And panic spreads fast. Her phone started ringing before she answered me. She looked at the screen. Declined it. Then it rang again immediately. I caught a few words from the voicemail speaker. "No water upstairs. The hydrant pressure test failed. Call me back." That last one changed her face. A county hydrant test should never fail in summer. Not here. Not this close to wildfire season. The wind picked up across the valley. Hot and dry. Somewhere beyond the ridge, I smelled faint smoke buried under the scent of dust and chlorine. Victoria noticed it too. She looked toward the dark hills for half a second. Then she straightened her blazer like she could still control the situation by posture alone. "You need to fix this tonight," she said. I looked past her toward the subdivision below us. Half the lawns were already dark where the sprinkler timers had shut down completely. The neighborhood still had not realized how bad this could get. Victoria stayed in my driveway another 10 minutes pretending she still had authority over something. Her phone never stopped vibrating. Every few seconds that pale blue screen lit up her face in the dark. Complaint after complaint. Low pressure. Dirty water. Dry taps upstairs. The whole subdivision was starting to feel it now. She finally walked closer to the pump shed and looked through the dusty window at the gauges. The red warning lights reflected in her eyes. "You built this?" she asked quietly. "My father did," I said. "I just kept it running." She folded her arms immediately after that. Like admitting the system mattered had physically hurt her. The HOA board never approved any of this equipment. I almost laughed. The old concrete reservoir behind my ranch could hold nearly 400,000 gallons. County crews inspected it every spring. Fire departments trained beside it every August. But Victoria still thought the world only existed if the HOA signed paperwork for it first. Another gust of hot wind rolled across the hill. Somewhere downhill, a transformer hummed hard under strain. Then came the sound I had been waiting for. No sprinkler hiss. Entire streets had gone quiet. That silence spread across subdivisions differently than people expect. At first it feels peaceful. Then your brain notices what disappeared. Victoria heard it too. Her expression changed for half a second. Fear finally breaking through the realtor smile. Then headlights climbed my driveway again. This time it was a black county pickup truck. Deputy Nolan stepped out slowly, one hand resting near his belt from habit more than threat. Sweat darkened the collar of his tan uniform. "Evening, Ethan," he said. "Victoria." She moved toward him immediately. "This man is sabotaging the neighborhood water system." Nolan looked exhausted before she even finished the sentence. "Ma'am, County Dispatch has already received 17 pressure complaints tonight." 17. That number landed heavier than I expected. The system was destabilizing faster than normal. Victoria pointed directly at me. "He admitted controlling the pumps." "Stabilization pumps," I corrected. "Not county supply." Nolan wiped sweat off his forehead and looked toward the reservoir hill behind my barn. "Is the emergency backup still active?" "Barely," I said. Isolation sequence kicked in after they locked the owner access valve. Victoria spun toward him. "Isolation what?" Nolan exhaled slowly through his nose. He already understood more than she did. That annoyed her immediately. "Nobody told us this property controlled emergency pressure systems," she snapped. "That sounds like a county oversight problem." "No," I said. "That sounds like you locking the wrong valve." The contractor who installed the chain earlier suddenly pulled into the driveway behind the deputy truck. He stepped out fast, carrying bolt cutters now instead of paperwork. Sweat soaked through the back of his gray work shirt. "Miss Hale," he said nervously, "the pressure monitors at the south hydrants just dropped below emergency minimums." Victoria stared at him. "Then unlock it." He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "The chain jammed," he admitted. Nobody spoke for a second after that. The metal cooling ticks inside the pump shed sounded painfully loud in the silence. Then somewhere far off beyond the ridge, another county fire siren started wailing. Not a test this time. Deputy Nolan slowly turned toward the smoke line forming against the dark horizon. The wind had shifted directly toward Willow Creek. The smoke line thickened fast against the horizon. Orange flickers pulsed deep inside the hills west of the subdivision. Not close enough to panic people yet. Close enough for every firefighter in the county to notice. Deputy Nolan grabbed his radio immediately. Static cracked through the dry night air. I caught fragments. Brush fire. Wind shift. Route 12 containment. The contractor finally attacked the chain with the bolt cutters. Sparks snapped off the metal under his flashlight beam. The smell of burned steel mixed with dust and overheated pump motors. He cursed under his breath when the cutters slipped again. "Hurry up," Victoria barked. "The whole neighborhood is calling me." Nolan ignored her completely. He walked past the shed and looked down toward Willow Creek Estates. Most of the backyard lights were still on. Families were outside now. Some stood beside dry sprinklers holding garden hoses that barely dribbled water. Pool pumps whined loudly in the distance. One house alarm chirped because their pressure-sensitive irrigation system had failed. That sound kept repeating somewhere downhill. Short. Sharp. Nervous. How long before total pressure collapse? Nolan asked me quietly. I checked the monitor again. Another drop. 4 psi gone in less than 10 minutes. Too fast. Way too fast. If the isolation cycle keeps spreading, I said, South End loses hydrants first. Victoria stepped closer immediately. Then override it. Cannot, I said. System thinks contamination risk reached owner access. Speak English. I pointed at the locked valve beside the road. Your people triggered the emergency protection sequence. The contractor finally snapped the chain apart. The lock hit the gravel with a hard metallic crack. But the pressure monitor inside the shed did not recover. Not even 1 psi. That was the moment my stomach tightened for real. The contractor noticed it too. Why is nothing changing? He asked. I walked into the shed and opened the old county relay cabinet mounted beside the pumps. Dust floated through my flashlight beam. Half the switches inside had flipped automatically into emergency isolation. My father designed it that way decades ago after a chemical spill nearly poisoned a rural line outside Austin. Once the system believed owner access had been compromised, it separated itself section by section until manual county authorization reset it. Victoria stared at the blinking red relays without understanding any of them. Turn them back on. I cannot do that alone anymore. Silence hit hard after that sentence. Even the contractor stopped moving. Deputy Nolan slowly looked at me. Who can? County Water Authority, I said. And fire control if emergency protocols activate. Victoria's face drained pale under the flashing red lights. You are telling me this entire neighborhood can lose water because of one lock? No, I said. Because your board interfered with protected infrastructure during wildfire season. Another gust of wind rolled through the valley. Stronger now. Hot enough to feel wrong against my skin. The smoke smell thickened immediately after. Nolan's radio exploded with chatter all at once. Multiple units. Evacuation prep. Engine crews rerouting. Then came the phrase nobody wanted to hear. Hydrant failure confirmed. Victoria grabbed Nolan's arm. Tell them this is temporary. Nolan pulled away gently but firmly. He looked tired. Older somehow. Ma'am, he said, temporary is all it takes with fire. Downhill, emergency lights suddenly flashed red across the subdivision entrance. The first fire engine rolled into Willow Creek Estates just after midnight. Red strobes flashed across perfectly trimmed lawns and white stone mailboxes. The neighborhood suddenly looked different under emergency lights. Less like a luxury subdivision. More like something fragile waiting to crack apart. I stood outside the pump shed listening to the engines idle downhill. The smell of diesel drifted uphill with the smoke now. Thick smoke. Dry smoke. The kind that scratches your throat before flames ever arrive. Deputy Nolan stayed beside me while County Dispatch flooded his radio nonstop. Every few seconds another voice cut through the static. Pressure loss. Containment trouble. Additional tankers requested. Victoria paced near her Lexus with her phone pressed against her ear. Her heels clicked sharply against the gravel. Fast. Nervous. Angry. She was not talking to residents anymore. She was talking to lawyers. I could tell by her voice. Short sentences. Careful words. The contractor sat on the edge of his truck bed staring at the broken chain on the ground like it might somehow fix itself. Nobody looked at the reservoir hill anymore. That bothered me. They still thought this was about one valve. It was not. The entire emergency grid was now treating Willow Creek like a compromised zone. A second engine tried testing the hydrant near the subdivision entrance. I heard the wrench crank open from nearly half a mile away. Then nothing. No rushing water. No pressure screamed through the line. Just dry metallic knocking echoing underground. One firefighter cursed loud enough for the wind to carry it uphill. Nolan closed his eyes for 1 second after hearing that. "This is turning ugly fast," he muttered. Victoria marched toward me immediately. "You are standing here watching this happen." "I warned you earlier," I said. "Weeks ago." Her jaw tightened. "About your ugly storage tanks? About touching protected infrastructure?" She pointed at the reservoir behind my property. Moonlight reflected off the dark water surface. Calm. Silent. "You could stop this right now." "Not without county authorization." "Then do it anyway." That answer told me everything. She still did not understand the size of the mistake. People like Victoria always believed systems bent for them eventually. Rules were for other people. Consequences too. A loud mechanical boom suddenly echoed downhill. Every head turned at once. One of the neighborhood pressure regulators had blown an emergency release valve. White vapor hissed upward beside the south entrance road. Residents started stepping out onto driveways now. Phones glowing in their hands. I heard confused voices drifting up the hill. "Why is the water brown? Why are the hydrants dry? What is burning?" Then came another sound. Helicopters. Faint at first. Then louder. Fire response aircraft moving toward the ridge west of town. Their rotors chopped through the hot night air in slow heavy pulses. The subdivision lights flickered once beneath them. Victoria looked shaken for the first time since this started. Not embarrassed. Not irritated. Actually shaken. She walked back toward Nolan. "Tell them to bypass the system," she said quietly. Nolan shook his head. "County cannot bypass emergency isolation without authority clearance." "Then call whoever signs the clearance." "Already trying." He looked toward me after saying it. Just for a second. Long enough for Victoria to notice. Her face hardened immediately. "You knew this would happen." I looked downhill again at the stalled engines and silent hydrants. "I knew the system would protect itself," I said. Another emergency siren started wailing closer this time. The helicopters kept circling west of the ridge while the subdivision slowly unraveled below us. I could see residents gathering near the entrance now. Clusters of people standing in sandals and robes under blinking emergency lights. Some carried flashlights. Others carried bottled water like they already understood where this night was heading. The hot wind never stopped. It rolled over the valley in dry waves that smelled like cedar smoke and overheated asphalt. Deputy Nolan stayed on his radio constantly now. His calm voice sounded thinner every minute. Fire crews were trying to establish secondary supply routes from neighboring districts. Tanker trucks were being rerouted from 20 miles south. That only happens when local systems fail hard. Victoria stood beside her Lexus scrolling furiously through emails on her phone. Her face looked washed out under the screen glow. Then she suddenly turned toward me. "You set this up." "No," I said. "Your board ignored warnings. You could have explained this better." I looked at the flashing alarms inside the shed. I tried. That part made her angrier than anything else. Because she remembered. 3 HOA meetings. 2 certified notices. 1 county inspection request she buried under landscaping proposals and violation hearings. She thought she was dealing with an annoying ranch owner who refused to modernize his property. She never bothered asking why the county utility maps kept referencing my reservoir site. A loud crack echoed downhill. One of the pressure mains had fully airlocked now. Residents started shouting near the south cul-de-sac. Even from uphill, I could hear panic creeping into their voices. Water systems fail quietly at first. Then all at once. Nolan received another call through dispatch. His expression changed immediately. "Fire crossed the west containment line," he said. Nobody moved after hearing that. The contractor slowly sat back down on his truck bed. Victoria stared toward the smoke glow building behind the hills. The orange reflection in the sky had doubled since midnight. Then county utility finally called my direct line. The ringtone sounded painfully loud in the silence. I answered immediately. "Walker." A tired voice came through over heavy static. "Director Hayes. County Water Authority." I had worked with him years earlier during drought reinforcement projects. "Ethan," he said, "tell me exactly what they touched." I looked directly at Victoria while answering. "Primary owner access valve. Unauthorized restriction. Full emergency isolation sequence triggered." Hayes muttered something sharp away from the phone. Papers shuffled. Voices moved in the background. "Can you manually restore?" he asked. "Not anymore. System spread too far." Another pause. Longer this time. Then Hayes lowered his voice. "The fire district just confirmed zero pressure in 3 hydrant sectors." Victoria stepped closer trying to listen. Hayes kept talking. "We found the old contingency file your father submitted in 1991. That sentence changed everything. My father kept records on everything. Every drought cycle. Every emergency modification. Every county failure simulation. He trusted paper more than promises." Hayes exhaled hard into the phone. "Ethan, your reservoir is listed as protected emergency infrastructure under county wildfire continuity law." Victoria's head snapped toward me. I could almost hear the realization hitting her in pieces. Protected infrastructure. County authority. Emergency law. She finally understood this was never just neighborhood plumbing. Hayes continued. "Nobody from that HOA had legal authority to interfere with your access systems." Behind us, another engine siren screamed into the subdivision entrance while smoke rolled thicker over the ridge. Victoria grabbed my arm the second I lowered the phone from my ear. Her nails dug through my sleeve hard enough to bunch the fabric. "You need to tell them this can be fixed," she said. Her voice had changed completely now. No smooth HOA confidence left. Just panic wrapped in expensive perfume and dry heat. I pulled my arm free slowly. "I already told them." Downhill, another hydrant test failed. I heard the empty metallic thumping through the underground mains again. Firefighters were moving faster now. Doors slammed. Radios crackled non-stop. Red emergency strobes bounced across house windows like silent lightning. The contractor finally stood up from the truck bed. "Miss Hale," he said carefully, "maybe we should tell the board what happened." She spun toward him instantly. "Nobody says anything until legal reviews this." That answer made Deputy Nolan stare at her for a long second. Even he looked surprised she still cared about liability more than the fire line moving toward town. Then the county evacuation alert hit every phone at once. Loud electronic alarms erupted across the subdivision below us. Residents stepped farther into the streets reading emergency notices under porch lights. "Prepare for possible evacuation. Conserve water immediately." The neighborhood atmosphere changed in seconds. Earlier it was confusion. Now it was fear. Real fear. I walked back into the pump shed and opened the old filing cabinet beside the relay panel. Dust rolled off the folders as I pulled them free. County continuity agreements. Fire district schematics. Emergency override protocols. My father labeled everything in thick black marker. He believed organized paperwork saved lives faster than arguments ever could. Victoria followed me inside. The red warning lights painted sharp shadows across her face now. "You knew all this was connected," she whispered. "I grew up maintaining it. She looked around the cramped shed differently after that. Not like it was some ugly utility building anymore. More like she had accidentally walked into the engine room of something she never understood. Nolan stepped inside next. Sweat and smoke clung to his uniform. "County director is sending emergency supervisors," he said. "Estimated arrival 20 minutes. 20 minutes felt dangerous now. The western sky had turned deep orange behind the hills. Tiny ash particles drifted through the flashlight beams outside. Somewhere downhill, children were crying. I heard car engines starting. Garage doors opening. Panic travels fast once neighborhoods realize firefighters cannot trust the hydrants. Victoria sat down heavily on an old wooden stool near the wall. The same stool my father used while repairing pump relays 30 years earlier. "This cannot destroy the whole subdivision," she muttered. I handed Nolan the county continuity file. He flipped through the pages under the flashing red lights. Then he stopped reading halfway through and looked directly at Victoria. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "your board interfered with protected wildfire infrastructure during an active emergency season." Hearing another person say it out loud hit harder than before. Victoria looked physically smaller after that sentence. Her phone started vibrating again across her lap. She ignored it this time. Then came a new sound from outside. Deep engines. Heavy engines. Multiple county utility trucks climbing the ranch road together. Their amber warning lights cut through the smoke drifting across the valley. Deputy Nolan stepped toward the doorway and exhaled slowly. "Well," he said quietly, "here comes the part your lawyers are not going to enjoy." The county trucks rolled into my yard one after another, tires crunching hard over the gravel. Amber warning lights spun through the smoke haze and painted the pump shed walls gold and red. For utility supervisors climbed out fast carrying clipboards, radios, and sealed county cases. Nobody wasted time shaking hands. Director Hayes stepped out of the last truck looking exactly how emergency managers always look during wildfire season. Exhausted. Sweating through his collar. Already angry before hearing the full story. He walked straight toward the broken lock lying beside the valve. "Who authorized this?" he asked. Nobody answered immediately. Victoria finally stepped forward with her blazer folded over one arm now. The polished HOA president image was gone. Ash specks clung to her hair. "The board acted under Community Maintenance Authority," she said carefully. Hayes looked at her once. Just once. "This valve controls protected wildfire continuity infrastructure," he replied. "Not landscaping." The contractor quietly looked at the ground after hearing that. Hayes motioned toward the pump shed. "Show me the relay status." I led the county team inside. The room suddenly felt smaller with 6 people crowded around the blinking emergency panels. The red isolation lights reflected off tired faces and dusty metal cabinets. One supervisor opened the county continuity binder my father filed decades earlier. He stopped halfway through the pages and whistled softly. "Jesus," he muttered. Walker documented everything. My father always said systems fail because people stop respecting maintenance. Looking at those old diagrams under flashing alarms, I could almost hear his boots crossing this same concrete floor. Hayes checked the pressure readings himself. Then his expression hardened. "South sectors are gone," he said. "North sectors hanging by a thread." Nolan stepped inside right after him. "Fire crossed another containment line," he reported. Mandatory evacuation prep expanded east. Outside, helicopters thundered overhead low enough to rattle the shed windows. Their searchlights swept across the reservoir hill behind my ranch. Victoria finally lost her composure completely. "Can somebody please explain how to turn this back on?" Hayes faced her slowly. "We cannot restore the emergency network until county inspection clears the owner access violation. That could take hours." "Yes. Silence swallowed the room after that. Heavy silence. The kind that changes lives quietly before anybody notices. Then one of the utility supervisors looked at me. "Ethan, can the reservoir still feed direct tanker fills?" "Yes," I answered. "Manual bypass only." Hayes nodded immediately. "Do it." We moved fast after that. I opened the old steel bypass gate behind the reservoir while county crews connected emergency tanker hoses under floodlights. Cold water thundered through the transfer pipes for the first time all night. The sound echoed across the valley like distant machinery waking up. Fire crews started filling mobile tanks directly from my reservoir within minutes. Downhill, residents gathered at the subdivision entrance watching the operation through drifting smoke. Phones out. Faces pale. Everybody finally seeing where their water actually came from. Victoria stood frozen beside the pump shed while county inspectors photographed the broken lock, the HOA notice, and the unauthorized chain fragments scattered in the gravel. Flashbulbs popped sharply in the dark. Each one sounded like another nail sealing something shut. Hayes signed an emergency order on the hood of his truck under rotating amber lights. Then he handed a copy directly to Deputy Nolan. Nolan read the page once and looked toward Victoria with visible disbelief. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the county just suspended your entire HOA board. The wildfire never reached Willow Creek Estates. Fire crews stopped at less than 3 miles west of the subdivision just before sunrise. The smoke still hung over the valley for 2 days afterward though. Thick gray haze. Burned cedar smell in every breeze. Ash settled across rooftops, lawns, and luxury SUVs like quiet evidence nobody could wash away. County tanker trucks stayed lined up beside my reservoir through the entire emergency response. Engines idled around the clock. Water transfer pumps growled non-stop under portable floodlights. I barely slept 40 minutes that whole weekend. Every time I closed my eyes, I still heard dry hydrants knocking hollow underground. By Monday morning, county investigators had taken over the Willow Creek HOA office completely. Utility inspectors photographed everything. Maintenance logs. Violation notices. Board emails. Contractor invoices. One investigator spent nearly 2 hours just documenting the broken lock and chain beside my valve line. Turns out paperwork matters a lot once lawyers and emergency agencies start asking questions. Victoria disappeared for almost 3 days after the suspension order. Then I saw her again outside the county administration building that Thursday morning. She looked different. Smaller somehow. No white Lexus this time. No polished blazer either. Just sunglasses, a wrinkled blouse, and a cardboard file box pressed against her chest. She stopped when she noticed me crossing the parking lot. For 1 second, neither of us spoke. Traffic hissed behind us on the wet highway. The valley had finally gotten rain overnight. Real rain. The kind that smells like dirt and cold pavement instead of smoke. Victoria looked exhausted. "I did not know," she said quietly. I believed that part. Arrogant people usually do not realize how dangerous they are until systems collapse around them. "You never asked," I answered. She lowered her eyes after that. No argument. No attitude. Just silence. County hearings moved fast after the wildfire investigation report came out. The HOA board lost operational authority within 2 weeks. Emergency interference violations. Infrastructure tampering. Unauthorized restriction of protected utility access. The county lawyers used phrases so cold and technical they sounded heavier than yelling ever could. Most residents turned on the board almost immediately once they learned where their emergency water actually came from. Funny how quickly neighborhood politics disappear when people realize sprinklers mattered less than fire hydrants. The subdivision changed after that. Fewer HOA signs. Fewer violation notices taped to doors. More county utility trucks driving through openly. By the end of summer, Willow Creek officially dissolved its private infrastructure committee and transferred oversight to a public utility district. The county offered me a permanent management contract for the reservoir system 2 months later. I accepted on one condition. No decorative fencing around the tanks. Director Hayes laughed so hard coffee nearly came out his nose when I said it. The first cool morning of October, I walked out to the reservoir before sunrise carrying my father's old thermos. The water surface sat perfectly still under the fog. Quiet again. Healthy systems always sound boring when they work properly. That is how you know they are doing their job. Downhill, the subdivision sprinklers finally hissed back to life 1 yard at a time. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady water moving where it was supposed to go. I stood there listening until the sun came up over the valley.